The sky over Kelder was a nervous canvas, stretched thin between two looming giants. To the galactic east, the pale Directorate's logic stars formed a precise, cold lattice, a web of pure, unfeeling order. To the west, the radiant quartz nebulae swirled in opulent, ritualized colors, a tapestry of ancient, unknowable passions. Kelder itself was the buffer, the forgotten thread, a patch of brown and green soil where humanity had taken root, pretending to be nothing more than farmers. They were very, very good at the pretense. The village sat nestled in a valley carved by the Greywash River, a settlement of fieldstone, reclaimed ship plating, and stubborn hope. Its people lived by the sun and the soil, their greatest concerns the timing of the spring rains and the price of cobalt cabbage at the mid-season market. Jonah Hale was, by all appearances, one of them. He was a man defined by the earth he worked. His hands were broad, the palms and knuckles thickened with calluses that maps of old riverbeds. A latticework of fine white scars from stubborn roots and slipped reaping hooks crisscrossed his forearms. He had a slow smile that reached his eyes, which were the color of the sky just before dawn, and he was known for his uncanny ability to guess the exact day a crop would be ready. He was, to all who knew him, a perfectly ordinary, perfectly reliable farmer. This perception was a carefully constructed lie, one he had lived inside for 12 years. Jonah Hale was an anchor. The name was a secret, a whisper from a life he had buried. An anchor was a human anomaly, a rare genetic quirk that allowed him to perceive and, more terrifyingly, to synchronize the base-level energy fields that every civilization emitted. The Directorate called it the volitional field. The court called it the Great Song. Jonah called it a curse. He could feel the cold, rhythmic pulse of the Directorate's logic engines and the soaring, chaotic choral bursts of the court's ritual ships. And if he chose, if he was truly foolish, he could touch them. He could introduce a harmonic, a vibration, a single, sustained note that could shatter their cohesion. He could, with enough focus and a great deal of pain, make their war machines, their shields, their very social structures fall silent. He had no intention of ever doing so again. He was a farmer. He grew things. He did not break them. The rumors arrived, as they always did, with the traders from the dust roots. They carried them like a contagion, passing them on in hushed tones over mugs of bitter root ale in the village common house. The pale Directorate, it was said, was tired of the stalemate. Their new schematics required a cleaner border. They were preparing a full optimization sweep to push the line straight through Kelder. On the other side, the Radiant Court was apparently insulted. The ancient prophecies, which governed their every move, spoke of this era as the time of reclamation. Their high chanters were preparing the grand procession. A ritual of such scale it was, in effect, a declaration of total war. In the common house, the farmers listened, nodded, and went back to their drinks. "Let them come," muttered old woman Gable, her face a roadmap of wrinkles. She gummed her ale. "My grandfather used to say, 'You cannot eat a logic bomb. You cannot pray to a plasma lance. But you can always eat a cabbage.'" A few men chuckled. "That is right, Gable," one replied, raising his glass. "Cabbage beats cannons, every time." Jonah smiled along with them, the expression feeling tight on his face. He felt the familiar coil of anxiety in his gut. He could feel the truth in the rumors. The background hum of the galaxy, usually a distant, ignorable static, was sharpening. The Directorate's pulse was speeding up, becoming brittle. The court song was rising in pitch, a frantic crescendo. They were not just rumors. They were the symphony tuning up for a finale. He finished his ale, the bitter root failing to mask the metallic taste of fear in his mouth, and walked out into the cool twilight, seeking the comfort of his fields. He spent the next few days in a fugue of denial, losing himself in the rhythm of the harvest. He worked his fields with a desperate intensity, digging, planting, and repairing his irrigation lines with a focus that bordered on mania. The irrigation system was his one concession to his past. To the village, it was a complex network of pipes and cisterns that kept his crops watered. To him, it was a rudimentary resonator, copper-wound coils buried deep in the loam, tuned to the planet's own geomagnetic field. It helped the plants grow, yes, but it also served as an early warning system. It let him listen. And for 12 years, it had let him hide. The warning came on a gray, misty morning. The mist was thick, clinging to the ground like wet wool, muffling all sound. Jonah was checking the pressure valves on his primary cistern when the network hummed a new note. It was not the directorate. It was not the court. It was something else. Something localized and powerful, trying to be quiet. He climbed the cistern tower, his boots ringing on the metal rungs. From the top, he could see over the mist, which lay like a blanket over the village below. A dark shape was moving on the old trade road. It was not a farmer's wagon. It was a small convoy, 3 heavy tread transports. Their hulls painted a drab, non-reflective brown, flanked a smaller, enclosed passenger crawler. They were military grade, but they flew no banner. Jonah's blood ran cold. This was not a directorate sweep. It was too small, too quiet. This was not a court procession. It was too plain, too functional. This was something else. Something wrong. He descended the tower and moved quickly toward the village square, his long farmer's stride eating up the distance. He tried to blend, to look like just another curious local, but his every sense was screaming. By the time he reached the square, the convoy had stopped. The mist swirled around the vehicles, giving them a ghostly, unreal quality. Doors hissed open on the transports, and 6 figures emerged. They were not soldiers. They were not farmers. They wore the same simple brown tunics and trousers, but they moved with a silent, coordinated grace that was deeply unsettling. They formed a protective perimeter, their eyes scanning the handful of villagers who had gathered to watch. Then, the door of the central crawler opened. A young woman stepped out. She was dressed like the others, in a shapeless brown tunic and a soft-brimmed cloth hat that shadowed her face. She carried a simple woven basket. She looked almost like one of the seed merchants who came through in the spring. Almost. She lifted her head to look at the village, and the mist seemed to part for her. She pushed the hat back, and Jonah's breath caught. She was young, perhaps in her mid-20s, but she possessed an air of absolute, unshakable authority. Her features were delicate but severe, her skin a pale, luminous white, and her eyes were a startling shade of violet. They were the eyes of someone who had never in her life been told no. This was not a seed merchant. This was royalty. The woman scanned the square, her gaze passing over the bewildered farmers, the stone and metal huts, the muddy marketplace. Her eyes, Jonah noted, were looking for something specific. They were not just observing, they were searching. She finally spotted what she was looking for: the market stall, where Old Man Hemlock sold his heirloom seeds. She walked toward it, her guards moving with her in a fluid, dangerous dance, their hands never far from hidden weapons. Jonah forced himself to relax, to lean against a support post, to look like a simple farmer. He was close enough to hear. "Good morning," the woman said. Her voice was clear as a bell, a cultivated, precise instrument. It held the faintest trace of an off-world accent, a musical lilt that scraped against Jonah's nerves. Old Man Hemlock, half-blind and perpetually grumpy, squinted at her. "What is so good about it? Mist is thick as thieves and twice as wet. What do you want?" The woman smiled, a small, polite curving of her lips. "I am looking for seeds. Something rare. Something that thrives in difficult soil. Hemlock grunted. All soil is difficult here, and I got nothing rare. Just what grows. Cabbage. Root barley. Sun maize. Take your pick. She pointed a slender finger at a row of clay pots. And those of them, Hemlock scoffed. Nothing. Wildflowers. Kelder rose. Blooms once every 5 years. Blue as the court sky. Useless. Just pretty. I will take them, she said. Suit yourself. It is 4 coppers for the lot. The woman reached into a pouch at her belt and paused. One of her guards stepped forward, holding out a handful of local currency. Hemlock took the coins, grumbling. As the woman picked up the pots, her basket slipped. She tried to catch it, and the sleeve of her tunic rode up, revealing her wrist. For a fraction of a second, Jonah saw it, a bracelet of woven gold and dark, pulsing gems, an artifact of impossible value and unmistakable origin. It was a signet of the Radiant Court. At the exact same moment, the woman's head snapped up, her eyes locking directly onto his. She had not seen him look. She had felt him look. She had felt his recognition, his jolt of pure, undiluted shock. Jonah held her gaze, his mind racing. He was the anchor. He could feel her field. It was immense, a roaring supernova of power and ritual, banked and constrained beneath that simple brown tunic. This was no mere diplomat. This was no high-born lady playing at being common. He knew, with a certainty that turned his stomach to ice, exactly who she was. This was Empress Aster, the ruler of the Radiant Court, here, in his village, buying flowers. She took a step toward him. Her violet eyes narrowed. You, she began, her voice a low murmur. You have a strong song, farmer. Jonah forced his lips into his slow, easy smile. He pushed down his own energy, muffling it, burying it under layers of feigned simplicity. He held up his calloused hands. Just strong hands, miss. Good for digging. Nothing for singing. Her eyes searched his face, unconvinced. She knew he was lying. He knew she knew. The air crackled between them. A silent, high-stakes negotiation, and then the sky screamed. It was a sound Jonah had only heard in his nightmares. A sound he had spent 12 years praying he would never hear again. It was the sound of a Directorate Hunter drone cutting through the atmosphere on a high-velocity burn. The mist vanished, boiled away in an instant by the drone's descent. It hung above the village, a thing of terrible, angular beauty. It was all black glass facets and razor-sharp silver struts, an apex predator built of logic and malice. A single, pulsing red sensor eye swept the square, and a voice, amplified and utterly devoid of emotion, boomed from the sky. Energy signature of an unsanctioned Class 4 artifact detected. All organic non-combatants will remain stationary for compliance testing. Failure to comply will result in optimization. Optimization. The Directorate's clean, sterile word for total annihilation. The villagers froze, terror-stricken. The blood drained from Empress Aster's face. Her guards fanned out, drawing sleek, humming energy blades from beneath their tunics. A futile, brave gesture against the machine in the sky. Jonah saw Aster's hand go to her neck. Beneath her tunic, something was glowing, a pulsating blue light. The bracelet. No, not a bracelet. Amulet. The drone had tracked her amulet. She had led it here. The drone's red eye fixed on her. Artifact detected. Primary target identified. Initiating containment protocol. A weapons pod slid open on the drone's underbelly. The dark maw of a plasma cannon cycling up. Panic shattered the square. People screamed and ran. No, Aster shouted, her voice ringing with command. It wants me get to cover. Her guards formed a human shield around her, but it would not matter. The plasma cannon would vaporize them, and half the square in a single, efficient burst. Jonah's mind went preternaturally calm. The time for hiding was over. The lie was dead. He could not let this happen. He could not let his home, his sanctuary, be erased because of a war that had nothing to do with them. He moved. "Everyone to the cistern," he roared, his voice cutting through the panic with an authority that stunned the villagers into obedience. It was not the voice of Jonah the farmer. It was the voice of someone else. "The cistern hail! Are you mad?" shouted Hemlock, grabbing his arm. Jonah shook him off. Now, he sprinted from the square, not toward the shelters, but toward his fields, toward the irrigation hub. The drone's red eye flickered, tracking the new motion, momentarily confused by the civilian scattering. "Target link anomalous," the mechanical voice declared. "Multiple resonance fields detected. Recalibrating." Jonah did not have much time. He vaulted the fence into his property and slid down the muddy bank to the hub, a low-slung structure of metal and stone. He tore open the main panel. Inside was not just a collection of valves and pipes, but a complex array of copper coils, silver-threaded wiring, and raw, uncut crystal nodes. He heard the whine of the drone's repulsors as it angled for a better shot. He had maybe 30 seconds. He jammed his hands into the array. This was the part he had always feared. This was the part he had sworn never to do again. He closed his eyes and reached. He did not just touch the machine. He became the network. He felt the cool water flowing through the pipes, the magnetic pull of the planet's core, the dormant energy in the soil, the roots of the crops. He grabbed that energy, all of it, and pulled. "What is he doing?" he heard Aster shout. She and her guards had followed him, taking cover behind the cistern. "Looks like he is fiddling with his water pipes," one of the guards said, his voice laced with contempt. Jonah ignored them. He gathered the energy, shaping it, weaving it into a new pattern. He was not a warrior. He was not a mage. He was a farmer. And farmers knew how to build a fence. He found the drone's targeting frequency, a high-pitched, brittle signal. It was arrogant, unprotected. He took his network, his web of pipes and straw and mud and copper, and he shouted into it. He created a feedback loop, a wall of pure, chaotic, telluric static. "Lid on the jar," he grunted, his knuckles white as he gripped the terminals. "Straw in the turbine." The effect was instantaneous. The high-pitched targeting whine from the drone choked, sputtered, and died, replaced by a blast of white noise. The drone's red eye went dark, and the plasma cannon retracted. "Warning!" the synthetic voice shrieked, laced with a new, unfamiliar note of confusion. "Sensory overload. All spectrum static field detected. Source unknown. Impossible. Retreating to safe analysis distance." The drone shuddered, its movement suddenly clumsy, like a hawk that had been blinded. It fired its thrusters, ascending rapidly, and vanished back into the clouds it had burned away. For a long moment, the only sound was the hiss of the irrigation system and the heavy, ragged sound of Jonah's breathing. He was shaking, the adrenaline draining away, leaving him weak and nauseated. He pulled his hands back from the panel. They were burned. The skin blackened where he had held the terminals. He turned, leaning against the cistern wall, and found himself facing the Empress. Her cloth hat was gone, her face smudged with dirt. Her violet eyes were wide with a dawning, terrifying comprehension. Her guards were staring at him, their energy blades still lit, their faces a mixture of awe and suspicion. "Pipes and straw," Aster said, her voice barely a whisper. "You blinded it with pipes and straw?" Jonah gave a weak shrug, trying to reclaim his farmer persona, but the smile would not come. It does not like the local mud. Do not, she said, taking a step closer. She was an empress again, every inch of her radiating power. Do not lie to me. Not now. I heard your voice in the square. It was not a command. It was a tuning. She reached out, not to his burned hands, but to his face. He flinched, but she was too fast. Her fingers, cool and smooth, brushed his temple. He felt the jolt as her mind touched his. It was not a violent probe, but a song, just as he had sensed. A wave of immense, ancient, complex harmony. And in that moment, she felt him. She felt the hollow place inside him, the vast, carefully shielded power he kept locked away. She gasped and pulled her hand back as if she had been burned. It is true, she breathed, her eyes shining with a fanatic's light. The sages were right. The prophecy is true. The one who sleeps in the soil will awaken. You are him. You are the anchor. Jonah pushed himself off the wall. The pain in his hands was a dull, distant throb compared to the roaring panic in his chest. I am a farmer, he said, his voice a low growl. I was a farmer until you brought that thing to my home. You put these people in danger. It was a risk, she countered, her royal calm fracturing, revealing the desperation beneath. I had to find you. The directorate is moving. My court is blind. They are all trapped in their rituals. This war will shatter us all, unless it is stopped. So stop it, Jonah said. You are the Empress. Go sing your pretty songs and make them listen. My song is not enough, she cried. Not against the directorate's silence. I can rally the faithful, but I cannot break their logic. But you can. You are the bridge. You can touch them both. You can create a resonance, a harmony that can force them to listen. A link. Anchor. That is all I need. Link with me. Combine my song with your earthcraft. We can open a channel, a path to escape, and then we can plan a real defense. He looked at her, really looked at her. She was beautiful and powerful, and utterly convinced of her own righteousness. She was also the single most dangerous person he had ever met. She was offering him exactly what he had run from: a purpose, a fight, a reason to use his power. He wrapped his burned hands in the hem of his tunic, hiding the evidence of what he was. No, he said. The word hung in the air, cold and final. Aster stared at him, her expression collapsing from hope to disbelief. No. What do you mean? No. I am offering you a way to save your people. You are offering me a way to make them a target, Jonah shot back. That drone. It was confused. It ran. But it will report what happened. Impossible. Source unknown. The directorate does not tolerate the impossible. They will be back. They will come here with science, and they will pick this village apart, pipe by pipe, person by person, until they figure out what I did. And when they do, they will optimize it. And you know what? The court will be right behind them, trying to reclaim me. I will not be the battlefield that destroys my home. This is the battlefield, farmer, she hissed, her fury making her majestic. There is no running. There is no hiding. There is only the choice of how you will fight. I made my choice, Jonah said, his voice flat. I chose to grow cabbage. A terrible, cold silence fell between them. Her guards looked at him as if he were an insect. She looked at him as if he had just shattered a priceless artifact. Finally, she composed herself. She straightened her back, and the Empress returned, cloaked in ice. You are a fool, she said softly. Or a coward. Perhaps both. I am a farmer, he repeated, though the word felt like ash in his mouth. She held his gaze for one last second, then turned away. We are leaving. Your Majesty, one of her guards asked, confused.
But the anchor is currently fallow, she snapped.
We will return to the ship. This location is compromised. She walked back toward the village, her entourage falling in around her. At the edge of his field, she paused and looked back. She reached inside her tunic and pulled out a small, flat object. It was a disk of jade, carved with the intricate, swirling symbols of the Radiant Court. It was her personal seal, a thing of immense power. She tossed it. It landed in the mud at his feet. That drone was a scout, she said, her voice carrying on the damp air. The real fleet is coming. The Directorate is preparing its sweep. And my court, my blind, glorious court, is preparing its grand procession. They will meet here, on your farm. She pointed to the seal in the mud. When that day comes, when the sky is burning and your crops are on fire, show that to my marshals. It will prove you are the one I sought. Perhaps then, you will find a reason to sing. She turned and, without another word, disappeared with her guards into the lingering mist, heading back toward their hidden transports. Jonah stood alone in his field for a long, long time, the silence of the village pressing in on him. He heard the first, tentative shouts as people emerged from their homes. "And are you all right? And what just happened?" He did not move. He stared at the piece of jade lying in the mud. It was a royal seal, a promise of war, a demand for his soul. Slowly, wincing as his burned fingers protested, he bent down. He did not pick up the seal. He pushed it aside. He plunged his hand into the rich, dark loam, scooping up a handful of the soil. He brought it to his face, smelling the deep, earthy scent of turned earth, of roots, of life, of peace. The piece was gone. It had cracked, and the fault line ran directly through his hands. He looked at his fields, his beautiful, quiet fields, and for the first in 12 years, he saw them for what they were. Not a sanctuary, not a hiding place, just the opening battlefield. The drone did not return, but the silence it left behind was worse than its scream. It was a heavy, breathless silence, filled with unasked questions. The villagers of Kelder, a pragmatic and resilient people, dealt with the impossible event in the only way they knew how, by pretending it had not happened. They went back to their fields, their looms, and their smithies, their conversations defaulting to the weather and the upcoming harvest. But they looked at Jonah Hale differently. They looked at him out of the corners of their eyes. He was still Jonah, the man with the slow smile and the calloused hands. But he was also the man who had shouted at the sky and made a demon of glass and metal flee. He was the man who had yelled about a cistern and somehow saved them all. They did not ask him how. They were afraid to know. Jonah retreated back into his routine, but the routine was a lie, and he knew it. The peace he had cultivated for 12 years had been a cage of his own making, and now the door was open. He felt raw, exposed, and he was angry. He was angry at the Empress for finding him, angry at the Directorate for looking, and angriest at himself for what he was. He began spending his afternoons with the village children. The other farmers thought it was a charming quirk. Jonah teaching the young ones about farming. The truth was more complex. The children were the only ones who did not look at him with fear. They looked at him with awe, and that was almost as bad, but it was manageable. "All right, you lot," he said one afternoon, standing in a fallow field with a dozen children. He had a spool of copper wire and a box of salvaged iron stakes. "Today, we are going to make it rain." A little girl with bright red hair named Pia piped up. "But Master Hale, the sky is clear. You always say you cannot make rain. You can only ask it." "He is right," Jonah said, uncoiling a length of wire. "We are not asking the sky. We are asking the ground. The ground is very polite. If you ask it properly, it will answer. For the next hour, he had them drive the iron stakes into the earth in a precise, sprawling pattern that gabled the constellations. He showed them how to wrap the copper wire around the head of each stake, pulling it taut, connecting each one to the next, creating a web. This is the asking part, he explained, his hands moving with quick, familiar gestures. You are making a net. You are telling the ground that all these points are friends. They want to talk to each other. And you, Pia, you are the voice. Go to that central stake. Hold this. He handed her a small, insulated rod. Tap it. 3 short, 1 long, like you are knocking on a door. The girl did as he said. The moment the rod touched the stake, a low-level current, drawn from Jonah's hidden cistern capacitors, flowed through the grid. The air over the field shimmered. A faint, low-pitched hum filled the air, a sound like a distant bee. I can feel it in my feet, a young boy shouted. That is the ground talking back, Jonah said, his voice soft. He was not looking at the children. He was looking at the horizon, his eyes distant. It is a resonance, a way to make one voice sound like many, a way to keep things in harmony. He was also lying. It was not a rainmaker. It was a scaled-down schematic of a resonance grid, the very thing he had used to blind the drone. He was teaching the children how to prime a defensive weapon. He was turning their playground into a minefield. Pia looked up at him, her expression serious. Does it hurt the ground, Master Hale? To make it talk so loud. The question hit him like a physical blow. He froze, his hand tightening on the spool of wire. He saw a flash of memory, not of a field, but of a city of glass towers, silent and dark. He saw a face, a woman's face, her eyes wide with terror and confusion, asking him a similar question. Does it hurt them, Jonah, to make them so quiet? He flinched, pulling his hand back. No, he said, his voice harsher than he intended. It does not hurt the ground. He forced his shoulders to relax, kneeling to the girl's level. It is a very strong decision to make the ground speak. You have to be sure you are asking for the right reasons. I once knew someone who made a very strong decision, and he lost. He lost someone, because he was so sure he was right. He stopped, the confession hanging in the empty air. The children just stared, uncomprehending. He shook his head, the farmer's mask sliding back into place. Never mind. Just remember. Respect the grid. It is more powerful than it looks. He did not know that he was being watched. Miles away, on a sterile observation platform orbiting Kelder, a man observed the resonance shimmer on his console. He was a tall, thin man, his face gaunt, his skin the color of old parchment. His uniform was the severe gray of the Pale Directorate, but he wore it less like a soldier and more like a scientist. This was Warden Selleck. Anomaly confirmed, Selleck said, his voice a dry monotone, devoid of inflection. He was speaking to the empty room, his gaze fixed on the telemetry. Subject Hale, Jonah, farmer, source of the multi-spectrum static field. He is crude. He is using telluric currents, inefficient, messy. An adjutant, his face projected on a small screen, shimmered into view. Warden, the scout's report was conclusive. He blinded a Hunter-class drone with, and I quote, subterranean agricultural hardware. It is a gross deviation. It is a beautiful deviation, Selleck corrected, a faint, cold light in his eyes. He is an untrained natural, a primal force, like finding a supernova in a bucket of mud. The Empress, of course, calls him Anchor, a typically sentimental, imprecise term from the Radiant Court. The array is not yet calibrated for this world, Warden, the adjutant cautioned. The ambient resonance is high. If we deploy the suppression towers now. The array is not for him, Selleck said, steepling his long, pale fingers. Not yet. The array is for the populace. It is a system of harmonic dampeners. It does not destroy the will. It does not cut it. It simply optimizes it. It tunes the collective consciousness, filters out the static of chaotic emotion, fear, rage, baseless hope, and leaves only the clean, pure signal of productive order. He looked at the image of the Kelder village. These people are living in filth. They are governed by weather, by rot, by fear of the unknown. We will give them the gift of structure. We will optimize their lives. And Subject Hail. He will be our first, most glorious graduate. Selleck's philosophy was the core of the Directorate. He did not seek to conquer. He sought to correct. He believed, with the passionless fervor of a true believer, that life was a complex equation that had, until now, been solved incorrectly. And he was the one who would finally balance it. The other side of that equation was in disarray, deep in the opulent, velvet-draped void of a Radiant Court battle sanctuary. Empress Aster stood before a schism. On one side stood Marshal Terran. He was a massive, imposing figure, his alien features set in a permanent scowl. He was of a species allied to the court, and he wore his ceremonial armor as if he had been born in it. He was the old guard, the fist of the court, and he held humanity in utter contempt. He refused you, Majesty. Terran's voice was a gravelly rumble. A mud-grubbing human primitive refused the Empress. This is what comes of indulging the lesser species. This is why the prophecies are a chain, not a guide. We should have scoured that planet the moment the Directorate showed interest. Send my legion. I will reclaim this anchor for you. I will bring him to you in 5 pieces. On the other side stood High Chanter Morel. She was ancient, her frail body held upright by a subtle anti-grav field. She was the heart of the court, the keeper of the great song. And what would you have, Marshal? Morel's voice was thin, but carried immense weight. A broken tool, a silent anchor. The prophecy is clear. The one who sleeps in the soil will awaken. It does not say will be dragged. The Empress was right to seek him. He is the key. He is a human, Terran spat. A species that thinks with its gut and its groin. They are chaotic, dirty. They are not worthy of the great song. They are the reason for the great song, Aster interrupted, her voice cutting through the argument. She had shed her farmer's disguise and was now in full regalia, a flowing gown of liquid crystal that seemed to weep light. But her face was hard. Marshal Terran, your bloodlust is noted, as always. High Chanter, your faith is also noted, but neither of you sees the truth. The anchor is not a tool. He is not a savior. He is a man, a terrified, stubborn, brilliant man who is currently sitting on the single, most valuable piece of strategic territory in this sector. And he is alone. She turned to a star chart. The Directorate will not be subtle for long. They will move to secure him. We will move to protect him. And he will be crushed in the middle. I am not asking for war, Marshal. Not yet. And I am not asking for prayers. High Chanter. I am going back. Alone. Terran lunged forward. Majesty, that is suicide. You are the vessel of the song. Then the vessel will do what the vessel must, Aster said, her violet eyes flashing. He refused an Empress. Perhaps he will listen to a miller's apprentice. 3 days later, a new face appeared in Kelder. Her name, the village was told, was Asha. She was a distant cousin of the miller, come to help with the harvest. She was quiet, kept to herself, and was, by all accounts, a terrible miller. She coated the common room in a fine layer of flour. Her first attempt at grinding root barley, having resulted in a small, contained explosion. Jonah found her at the end of her first day, sitting by the river, covered in flour, vigorously scrubbing a gear cog. He sat down on the bank a few feet away, not looking at her. "You are holding the scraper wrong," he said. "I am not," she snapped, not looking up. "The cog is wrong. The cog has been right for 50 years. You are pushing when you should be pulling. You are trying to force it. You have to listen to the machine. Feel the burrs. Scrape with them, not against them." She stopped, her shoulders tense. "And I suppose you are an expert in milling, in addition to growing cabbage." Jonah smiled. A real smile this time. It felt rusty. "No, but I am an expert in things that are stubborn. You have to find their rhythm." She threw the cog on the ground. "This is a farce. I am an Empress. I command fleets. I harmonize with nebulae. I should not be scrubbing." "And yet, you are covered in flour," Jonah pointed out. He picked up the cog and a scraper. He turned it in his hands, his calloused thumb feeling the metal, and with a few quick, effortless scrapes, he dislodged the caked-in grit. He handed it back to her. She looked at the clean cog, then at him. "You are infuriating." "I am a farmer," he said. "It is my job." She stayed. She did not return to the miller's. The next morning, she appeared at the edge of his field, wearing a clean, borrowed tunic and a look of grim determination. "What?" he asked, not pausing his digging. "I am a terrible miller," she said. "I know. The whole village knows. The miller's wife is using your name to scare her children into behaving." Astor's lips thinned. "I am here to work. Teach me." "Teach you what? How to get dirt under your nails. How to break your back for a root vegetable." "Teach me," she said, her voice low and fierce. "What is so damned important about this mud that you would choose it over the fate of the galaxy?" So he did. He taught her. He was a brutal teacher. He made her weed. He made her dig. He made her haul water until her back screamed and her royal hands were raw. And she did it. She complained. She cursed in languages Jonah had never heard. But she did it. A strange, quiet rhythm developed between them. They worked side by side, often in silence. But it was a shared silence, a comfortable one. He found himself admiring her stubbornness. She was as unyielding as a weed. But she was learning. "You are pulling the whole plant," he said one afternoon. Weeks later, they were weeding the cabbage patch. "You are breaking the roots." "It is a weed," she grumbled, tossing the offending plant over her shoulder. "It is a weed in the wrong place. But it is still a plant. It has its own song, as you would say. You cannot just rip it out." That is what Taryn would do. She froze, her head snapping up. "How do you know that name?" "I hear things," Jonah said, carefully avoiding her gaze. "The stars have been loud, lately. Send the Legion. Bring him in 5 pieces. Sounds like a charming fellow." Astor sat back on her heels, her face pale. "You can hear. That far." "I can hear," Jonah said, his voice quiet. "Everything. I hear the Directorate marshalling its resources. I hear Warden Selleck giving lectures on optimization. I hear your court splitting in 2, and I am in the middle, weeding cabbage." "Then help me," she pleaded, all pretense of Asha, the apprentice gone. "I am," he said, and he pointed to the weed in her hand. "You are still doing it wrong. Look, you have to loosen the soil around it. Get under the root. You do not pull it. You convince it to let go." He showed her, his large, scarred hand closing over her smaller, blistered one, guiding her fingers into the soil. "See, there is an art to it, even weeding." She stared at his hand on hers, And for a moment, the galaxy held its breath. A connection, simple and real, hums between them. It was, he thought, a resonance he did not want to block. He pulled his hand away, clearing his throat. The Harvest Festival is in 2 days. The village. They would like it if you came. A festival, she said. The Empress returning. We do not have time for... We are farmers, Jonah said. We always have time for the harvest. It is the whole point. The Directorate, however, did not care about the harvest. While Jonah taught Aster how to weed, Warden Selleck had been busy. On the high salt hills that overlooked the valley, a new structure had risen. It was not a tower. It was a tooth. A single, needle-like spike of black glass that seemed to drink the sunlight. A forward outpost. With the outpost came the blockade. Small, silent Directorate skiffs began patrolling the trade roads. They did not attack. They did not threaten. They simply observed. They scanned every wagon, every trader, every shipment of grain. The trade into Kelder, the village's lifeblood, slowed. Then it stopped. The farmers grew restless. This was a threat they understood. They are trying to starve us out, Gable said in the common house, her voice trembling. It is the new tower, the miller said. It is doing something to the crops on the high fields. They are wilting. Jonah had felt it. The tower was projecting a low, dissonant hum. It was not the array. It was something smaller, something new. And then, the shardlings came. Jonah found the first one clinging to the copper wiring of his irrigation hub. It was beautiful, a tiny, fractal thing like a metallic snowflake. It was also, he noted with a cold dread, eating the copper, leaving a trail of fine gray dust. He brought it to Aster, who was washing soil from her face. The Directorate has sent us a gift, he said, holding it out on a leaf. She looked at it, her brow furrowed. It is a machine, a nanite. A shardling, Jonah said. A mechanical microbe. It eats high-conductance signals and wiring. The irrigation grid. The village's power generator. Our pipes and straw. Selleck is not stupid. He knows how I blinded his drone. He is not attacking me. He is disarming me. He is threatening the harvest, Aster said, her voice grim. He is choking the village. This is a siege. It is worse, Jonah said. He led her to his fields. The plants at the edge, closest to the Directorate tower, were turning gray. The shardlings were not just in the wires. They were in the soil. They were eating the trace minerals the plants needed to live. He is not just disarming me. He is poisoning the earth. This, Aster understood. This was not an abstract war. This was an attack on the land. What do we do? She asked, her voice quiet. Jonah looked at the wilting crops, at the black spike on the hill, and at the woman standing beside him. He felt the old, familiar anger, but beneath it, something else. A cold, clear resolve. We cannot fight the tower, he said. Not yet, and we cannot stop the shardlings. Not all of them, but we can listen. Listen. Listen to what the crop's dying. No, Jonah said. He knelt, placing his burned, scarred palm flat on the soil. We listen to the earth. You listen to the sky, to your great song. Selleck listens to his machines. You are both wrong. You are both shouting so loud. You cannot hear what is right beneath your feet. He closed his eyes. Be quiet. Just for a second. Stop being an empress. Stop being Asha. Just be... She looked at him, exasperated. But she knelt beside him. She placed her own hand, now calloused and dirty, on the earth. I feel nothing, she said after a moment. Just... dirt. You are trying too hard, Jonah whispered, Do not try to feel. Just be open. It is not a song. It is a pulse. A deep, slow, ancient rhythm. The planet's heartbeat. It was here before the Directorate. It was here before your court. It will be here after. Feel it. She closed her eyes. Her breathing deepened. He watched her face, the imperial lines softening, the tension easing. A full minute passed. Then, her eyes flew open. I feel it, she breathed, a look of utter wonder on her face. It is so slow and so strong. It is the source, the bass note, your song, my song, Selic's logic. It is all just static, laid on top of this. This, Jonah said, his hands still on the ground, is what we are fighting for. This is the real power. Not your prophecies. Not his machines. This, he met her gaze. Selic thinks he is blinding me by cutting my wires. He is wrong. I do not need the wires. Not really. They just make it easier. The harvest festival was that night. The village was determined to have it. It was an act of defiance. If the Directorate was going to starve them, they would feast first. They lit the great bonfire in the square, and they brought out the hidden stores of ale and preserved fruits. Jonah and Aster stood on the edge of the firelight. They were an odd pair. The farmer and the miller's apprentice, both covered in dirt, both vibrating with a secret they now shared. They are brave, Aster said, watching a child dance with a ribbon. They are stubborn, Jonah corrected. There is a difference. A flicker of movement at the edge of the square caught his eye. Not a villager. Someone in a dark, form-fitting suit. Then another. They were moving through the shadows, their movements fluid and economical. Directorate agents, not drones. Wetworks. Aster, he said, his voice low. We need to go. Now. She saw them at the same instant. They are not here for you, she whispered, her face pale. They are here for me. The agents moved, converging on her. They were fast. But Jonah was faster. He grabbed her arm and pulled her into the alley between the smithy and the common house. This way, he yelled. They burst out onto the path leading to his fields. The agents were right behind them. He heard the characteristic hiss thump of a Directorate pulse rifle. A bolt of blue energy sears the air where Aster's head had been a second before. They are not trying to capture you, Jonah yelled, pulling her behind the cistern. They are trying to kill you. Selic, she panted, her voice tight with rage. He is optimizing the problem. 3 agents fanned out, taking cover, cutting off their escape. They were professionals. This was an execution. Jonah looked at the black tower on the hill, its single red light glowing like a hateful eye. It was humming. That low, dissonant signal. Poisoning his crops, giving these agents cover. He had no grid. The Shardlings had seen to that. He had no pipes, no straw. He only had the earth. And he had Aster. I need your voice, he said, grabbing her shoulders. What? I need your voice. Not your Empress voice. Your real one. The one I felt in the square. The great song. Can you sing it now? I need focus. I need ritual. I cannot just... Yes, you can, he said, his eyes boring into hers. Sing. Sing to the earth. Sing with me. He put his hand on the cistern wall, the other on the ground. He closed his eyes and reached. He found the pulse, the deep, slow rhythm of the planet. It was there. It was always there. He found the dissonant hum of the Directorate tower. It was a sharp, ugly thing, a nail scraping on glass. Sing, he commanded. Aster closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, and she sang. It was not a song of words. It was a note, a single, perfect, soaring note of pure harmony. It hit Jonah like a physical blow, a wave of warmth and light. He grabbed it, his mind seizing the harmony, and he amplified it. He used the planet's pulse as a diaphragm, as a speaker, and he shouted that note, his own harmony, his own power, twisting into hers, and he aimed it directly at the tower on the hill. It was not a command. It was not a plea. It was a full-throated, open-throated, primal roar. The tower on the hill did not explode. It did not shatter. It simply stopped. The red light flickered and died. The dissonant hum choked. The ground beneath their feet, which had been vibrating with that ugly signal, went still. In the alley, the 3 Directorate agents stumbled, clutching their heads as their comlinks, slave to the tower's frequency, blasted their ears with pure, amplified feedback. They collapsed, unconscious but alive. Jonah fell to his knees, the backlash of the effort making his vision swim. Aster was staring at the now dark tower, her face a mask of utter shock. "By the stars," she whispered. "What did we just do?" "We changed the key," Jonah panted, pushing himself up. The celebration in the square had stopped. Everyone was staring. First at the collapsed agents, then at the dark tower on the hill. "Well," Jonah said, dusting off his pants, "I think the party is over." He was wrong. The war was just beginning. Later that night, long after the village had secured the unconscious agents, Jonah and Aster stood in his barn. A map was spread on the table, a tactical projection Aster had produced from a hidden device. "This is why," she said, her finger tracing a series of glowing lines. "This is why Selleck is here, why Terran is so angry. It is not just about you, Jonah. It is about Kelder." The map showed the energy fields of the sector, the cold, blue lattice of the Directorate, the swirling, violet song of the court, and right where Kelder was, the lines did not just meet. They overlapped. They created a complex, harmonic knot. "It is a resonance point," Jonah said, the strategic implications hitting him. "A natural amplifier." Aster said, her voice grim. "Only one in the sector. My prophecies call it a nexus of the song. The Directorate calls it a Class 9 strategic overlap." She looked at him, her violet eyes holding no trace of the miller's apprentice. "Whoever controls this point," she said, "does not just win the battle. They do not just win the war for this sector. They can broadcast a signal. They can rewrite the music for the entire galactic arm. Terran wants to turn it into a fortress. Selleck wants to turn it into a broadcast tower to spread his optimization. Both of them will destroy this planet to get it." Jonah looked at the map, at the glowing knot that was his home. He looked at the woman standing in front of him. He thought of his fields, of the children he had taught to make rain, of the deep, quiet pulse of the earth. "They will have to go through me," he said. Aster shook her head. "They will. That is the point. You cannot stop them." "No," Jonah said, his voice quiet. He finally reached into his pocket and pulled out the muddy jade seal she had thrown at his feet weeks ago. He had picked it up after all. He placed it on the map, covering the glowing knot. "I cannot stop them," he said, meeting her gaze. "But we can." The new silence from the black tower on the hill was a lie, and Jonah Hale knew it. It lasted 2 days. On the 3rd day, the sky tore open. It did not tear with sound, but with light. High in the stratosphere, something shimmered. At first, it looked like a ripple of heat, but as the sun rose higher, the ripple coalesced. It formed a pattern, a vast, geometric web of interlocking crystal lines that caught the sunlight, refracting it into a million cold, sharp pinpricks. It was beautiful, like a spider's web covered in frost. And it was descending. The array. Not a single tower this time, but the full, Networked system. Down in the village. The effect was immediate. Old man Hemlock, on his way to the market, simply stopped. He stood in the middle of the path, a look of mild confusion on his face, and then sat down on the ground, his basket of seeds spilling. In the common house, laughter from a game of cards faded into a dull, listless murmur, and then into silence. The children in the fields, the ones Jonah had taught to make rain, let their tools drop from suddenly nerveless fingers. It was not a pain. It was a pressure, a thick, heavy blanket of apathy. A voice in the back of the mind that whispered, "What is the point? It is easier to sit. It is better to be still. Obey the pattern. The pattern is calm." Jonah felt it, a cold, metallic spike trying to drive itself into his own resonance. He fought it off, his training and his nature a shield. But it took effort. It was a mental suffocation. He looked at Aster. She was on her knees by the cistern, her face pale, her hands pressed to her temples. "It is optimizing," she panted, the word a curse. "It is not just dampening, it is leveling. It is trying to make everyone the same, a single, low, obedient note." "Selleck's order," Jonah growled. He pulled her to her feet. The crystal lattice now covered the valley from ridge to ridge, a cage of cold light. "He is sanitizing the battlefield before he commits." As if his words were a summons. A new sound split the air. From the west, from the direction of the radiant court, came a sound like 1,000 great horns being blown at once. It was a rich, defiant, harmonic blast that vibrated in the chest. The villagers, roused from their lethargy by the new stimulus, looked up. A fleet was descending. It was not a fleet of gray metal and logic. It was a procession of art. The ships were teardrop-shaped, hulls of polished, iridescent biomaterial that pulsed with internal light, like great star-going squids. Vast, kilometer-long banners of woven light unfurled from their sides, depicting complex, ritualized scenes of battle and ascension. They did not hum. They sang, their engines a multi-part choir. They did not land in the fields. They took up position in the sky opposite the array, a wall of opulent, passionate, terrifying power. Kelder, the village, the farm, was now the dead center between two gods. An hour later, they met in the common house. The air was thick with the scent of ozone from the court's transporters and the cold, sterile smell of the array's lingering field. Aster, now dressed in a simple but severe dark blue robe, stood at one end of the trestle table. Jonah stood beside her, his arms crossed, his face a mask of stone. High Chanter Morel was there, her frail form seeming to glow, her eyes sad as she looked at the listless villagers. And then, there was Marshal Terran. He had transported down personally, flanked by 2 7-foot-tall guards in golden armor. Terran was even more imposing in person. He radiated a physical, palpable heat, and a deep, unsettling scent of cinnamon and iron. He did not sit. He prowled. "So," Terran's gravelly voice rumbled, ignoring everyone but Aster. "This is the place. This is the anchor." His gaze fell on Jonah, and his lip curled in a distinctly non-human sneer. "This is the human, this farmer. He is the one from the prophecy, Marshal," High Chanter Morel said, her voice thin. "The prophecy did not say he would be a coward," Terran shot back. He jabbed a thick, armored finger at Jonah. "He refused the Empress. He hid in the mud while the Directorate built a noose around this world. He is a lesser species. Your Majesty. He is unreliable. He is a risk." "He is the one who blinded their drone," Aster said, her voice quiet, but steel hard. "He is the one who, with me, disabled their forward tower. He is more than you know." "I know what I see," Terran roared, slamming his fist on the table. The wood cracked. A soft, dirty primitive. The Directorate is leveling the field. We should clear it. Give me 1 hour. My legion will land. We will secure this human, and we will raise this village. We will build a true temple of the song on this nexus, and deny the Directorate their prize. Jonah, who had been silent, finally spoke. You will not, he said. It was not a shout. It was a flat, cold statement. Terran turned, his massive head swiveling, his eyes narrowing. What did you say, human? I said, you will not, Jonah repeated, uncrossing his arms. He walked to the head of the table, pushing aside a fallen mug. This is my home. You are not raising it. He is not leveling it. He looked at Terran. Your Temple of the Song, that is a fortress, a target. You will bring the entire Directorate fleet down on this valley, and you will fight them, and you will burn everything. You are a flood, Marshal. You will drown the crops. Then he turned to Aster, his gaze just as hard. And Salik, his array. It is a hailstorm. It will flatten every plant, make the ground sterile. You are both the same. You are two different ways to kill a harvest. Then, what is your solution, farmer? Terran mocked. You will throw cabbage at them. No, Jonah said. I will use what I have. I will use the farm. He swept his arm across the table, knocking aside bowls and plates. Mirel, your ships, that song they sing, is it just noise, or can you control it? The high chanter blinked, surprised. It is the hymn of passage, anchor. It is focused. It can be tuned, to a single note, if required. Good, Jonah said. He turned back to Terran. And you, Marshal, your guards, can they follow an order, a precise one, or do they just know how to raise? Terran bristled, but Aster put a hand on his arm. He has a plan, Marshal. Let him speak. Jonah looked at them all, the farmer giving orders to an empress, a general, and a high priest. The absurdity almost made him laugh. Selik's array is a broadcast, a single, powerful, focused song. It is pressing down, but it is also a receiver. It has to be. It is listening for feedback, optimizing its own signal. He pointed out the window, toward his fields. My irrigation system, it is ruined. The shardlings ate the copper, but the channels are still there. The pipes, the ditches. They are a network, carved into the earth. They are a wave guide. He looked at Aster. You said I was a bridge. You were wrong. My farm is the bridge. We are going to use my irrigation channels to gather your hymn of passage. We are going to shape it, amplify it with the planet's own resonance, and we are going to reflect Salik's song right back at him. We are going to make his towers sing his note so loudly, they shake themselves apart. There was a long silence. Morel looked intrigued. Terran looked utterly baffled. That is insane. You want to fight a strategic resonance cage with plumbing. And faith, Jonah added, looking at Morel. And soldiers, he added, looking at Terran. I need your men to protect the nodes, and I need your singers, high chanter, to hit the note I tell you to hit, exactly when I tell you to hit it. It is a farmer's plan, Aster said, and for the first time, a small, genuine smile touched her lips. I like it, Terran threw his hands up. This is a mockery, Your Majesty. I must protest. This is my decision, Marshal, Aster said, and all warmth vanished from her voice. The Empress was back. She unfastened a clasp at her throat. A heavy chain, which Jonah had not noticed, held a single, flat amulet of jade. It was the twin of the one he had in his pocket. This was not a token. This was the original. The signet. The seal of accord. She held it out. Not to Terran. Not to Morel. She held it out to Jonah. "The High Chanter leads in faith," she said, her voice ringing in the small room. "The Marshal leads in war. But the anchor leads in balance. The seal of accord is yours, Jonah Hale. You command this valley. You command my fleet's song. You command my marshal's legions. Lead us. Save us." Jonah stared at the signet. It was warm, pulsing with a faint, violet light. Alive. It was everything he had run from. It was authority. It was a target. It was a chain. "I do not want this," he whispered. "No one who wants power should ever have it," Aster whispered back, her eyes locking with his. "That is why it must be you." He slowly reached out, his dirty, calloused fingers closing over the ancient, priceless artifact. The moment he touched it, he felt a jolt, a connection. He felt the entire Radiant Court fleet in orbit, a vast, complex, choral mind, and he felt them, all at once, except him. He felt their combined power, their song, waiting for his direction. Terran let out a sound of pure, strangled rage. "Your Majesty, you cannot. It is sacrilege." "It is survival, Marshal," Aster said. She turned to him, her eyes blazing. "And you will obey him, or you will be relieved of command. That is my final word." Terran looked from the Empress to the farmer holding the signet. He said nothing, but his eyes promised murder. He spun on his heel and stormed out of the common house, his armored guards following. Jonah was left holding the seal, the weight of it suddenly heavier than a mountain. The preparations were frantic. The array's pressure was increasing, and Jonah knew they had little time. The villagers were moved to the safest location, the deep storage cellars beneath the common house, shielded by earth and stone. Jonah, Aster, and a reluctant contingent of Terran's golden-armored legionaries worked in the fields. The farmer's plan was in motion. Jonah found Aster by the barn, where she was trying to affix the seal of accord to his farmer's tunic. It looked ridiculous. A priceless imperial artifact pinned to stained, homespun cloth. "It will not stay," she muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There is a locking. I do not know. The acolytes always—" "It is fine," Jonah said, his voice tight. He was on edge. "It is not fine. You are the commander of the Accord. You must wear it. It has protocols. When you address the Marshal, you must hold it. So," she tried to show him a complex, ritualized salute, her fingers splayed in a specific pattern over the jade. Jonah tried to copy her and fumbled, the seal almost slipping from his grasp. "This is absurd. I am a farmer. I am going to be covered in mud in an hour. I cannot lead a battle and worry about this." Aster stopped, her hands on his chest, and looked up at him. "You are right. It is absurd. And you are not a farmer, Jonah. Not anymore. But you are not him." She meant Terran, or Selleck, or the man he used to be. "You are you, and you are terrified." "I am," he admitted, his voice low. "Good," she said. "So am I. Now, hold still. The salute it is about projecting. It is about showing them the song is with you." She guided his hand, her fingers cool on his scarred ones. "Like this. Feel the balance of it." He practiced the strange, graceful movement. It felt alien. He looked over her shoulder. One of Terran's legionaries was prepping a trench at the edge of the field, but he was using a high-energy pioneer tool, a short, humming staff, to simply incinerate the soil. "No," Jonah shouted, striding over. "Stop! What are you doing?" The legionary looked up, his alien features impassive. "Clearing a firebreak. Anchor." "You are cauterizing the earth," Jonah snapped. "You are killing the resonance. This is not a war of fire. It is a war of music. We need the earth alive." He saw a pile of old tools by the barn. He grabbed a simple scythe, its wooden handle worn smooth, its steel blade sharp. He strode over to Aster. "You want to help stop playing with jewelry and learn to dig?" He was going to show her, but she simply took the scythe from him. "I am not a stranger to this," she said. She squared her shoulders, took a full, powerful swing, and embedded the scythe 6 inches deep in the packed earth. Jonah winced. "And now it is stuck. You are trying to kill it. You are trying to behead the field. This is not a sword, Your Majesty. It is a scythe. It is about rhythm. It is like you're weeding." He stood behind her, his hands guiding her arms. "You do not chop. You pull. You use your whole body. From the ground. Let the blade do the work. It is a snap, a flick. Like this." He guided her through the motion. The blade sang through the grass and topsoil, creating a clean, perfect arc. "Oh," she said, surprised at the ease of it. "Yes. Oh," he said, his voice a low rumble in her ear. He did not move away. His hands were still on her arms. "A farmer's tool. A queen's weapon. It is all about how you hold it." She turned her head, her face just inches from his. The air was thick with the ozone of the fleet above, the smell of damp earth, and something else. Something that had been growing between them since the day she had first touched his hand in the soil. "You teach me your ways, farmer," she whispered, "and I teach you mine." "A fair trade," he murmured. A blinding flash from the high hills shattered the moment, a beam of pure, white light, as wide as the common house, swept across the high fields. It was not a plasma bolt. It did not explode. Where the light touched, the mature, ready to harvest grain crops did not just burn. They vanished. They turned to black, sterile dust, which the wind instantly scattered. "Gods," Aster breathed, stepping away from him. "What is that?" "The Parhelion," Jonah said, his voice flat, all life gone from it. "The Sun Scythe. Selik's new toy. It is an optical resonance cutter. It does not burn. It unmakes. It shatters the molecular bonds of living things." The beam swept again, closer this time, and a whole field of cobalt cabbage dissolved into nothing. "He is not leveling the field anymore," Aster said, her voice shaking. "He is erasing it. He is taking our food, our stakes. He is taking our hope," Jonah corrected, and his face was a mask, a gray, cold mask that Aster had never seen. He was not looking at the Parhelion. He was looking at his hands. He was remembering. The glass towers, the silent city, the woman's face. "Does it hurt them, Jonah, to make them so quiet?" He had used a power like that, once. A chord, not to balance, but to erase, to optimize. He was back there, 12 years ago, the architect of a perfect, silent, loveless peace. "Jonah," Aster's voice was sharp. "Jonah, what is it you are freezing?" I cannot," he whispered, his hands shaking. "I cannot fight this. This is what I did. This is my work. Salik, he is just copying me, a cruder version, but it is me." "What?" "I built this," he said, his voice a broken thing. "The array, the chord, the idea of optimizing a population, that was my theory. I was young. I thought I could tune society, make it perfect. I optimized a whole valley, a whole I did not know. I did not know it would. I killed them. Aster. I did not kill their bodies. I killed them. I made them hollow, loveless. He looked at her, his eyes a maelstrom of self-loathing. I cannot be the one to fight him. I am him. Aster slapped him. Her hand, calloused from farming, cracked across his face. He staggered back, his hand to his cheek, his eyes wide with shock. No, she said, her voice shaking with a cold, pure rage he had never heard. You do not get to do this. You do not get to hide behind your guilt. I do not care what you were. I care what you are. Are you that man, the one who built this? Or are you the man who taught me how to weed? The one who taught children to make rain? The one who stood up to Terran? She grabbed the front of his tunic, her face inches from his. I do not care about your past, Jonah. Your loveless decision is made. This one. Right now. This is the one that matters. Power does not kill. Farmer. Loveless decisions do. So I will ask you one time. Do you love this valley? Do you love these people? Yes, he choked out. Then fight for them, she roared. Fight me, fight with me. But for God's sake, fight. He stared at her, the sting on his cheek fading, replaced by a new, clear fire. He saw his past, a dark, cold void, and he saw her, a furious, living, violet-eyed star. He made a decision, a new one. He pulled her to him and kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was hard, and desperate, and full of salt and soil and fear and a sudden, blazing hope. It was a promise. It was an anchor. When he broke away, they were both breathless. All right, he said, his voice hovers but steady. All right. Let us go fight a god. The sky was now dark, the crystal lattice of the array pulsing with a sickly, triumphant light. A new sound began, a low, grinding, hissing. What now? Aster panted, wiping her mouth. Rain, Jonah said, looking up. It was not water. It was a fine, gritty, gray-white powder, salt, a rain of artificial, conductive salt. He is shorting us out, Jonah said, a new, grim admiration in his voice. The salt will ruin the soil. And it will coat every piece of metal, every wire, every... A new, chittering sound came from the fields. The shardlings. They were back, swarming out of the earth, attracted by the salt-coated bamboo poles. He is blocking our antennas, Aster said. No, Jonah said. A slow, farmer's smile spreading across his face. He is not. He is a scientist, Aster. He thinks of metal, of copper, of wires. He pointed to the poles, where the villagers had, per his instructions, caked them in thick, mineral-rich river mud. He has forgotten about the earth. The mud is the antenna. The bamboo is just the stake. He ran to the center of the field, to the main irrigation hub. Aster was right beside him. The golden armored legionaries were in place, fighting off swarms of shardlings with their energy blades, protecting the nodes. The High Chanter's voice was in his ear. Broadcast from her ship, we are tuned. Anchor. The choir is ready. The pressure from the array was immense. A physical weight. The salt rain stung his skin. The Parhelion beam was sweeping closer, a wall of annihilation. Jonah stood before the control panel, the ruins of his old warning system. He placed the seal of accord into a slot he had cut, a perfect fit. The panel lit up, new symbols flaring, integrating with the court systems. He looked at Aster. Are you ready to sing? She nodded, her face pale but resolute. Jonah closed his eyes. He placed one hand on the control panel, and one hand flat on the damp, salty earth. He did not reach for the planet's pulse. He became it. He felt the salt, the mud, the bamboo, the fear of the villagers, the stubborn pride of Terran's soldiers, the pure, high song of Astor's choir, and the cold, oppressive logic of the array. The earth, the planet itself, answered him. It surged up, a wave of deep, warm, ancient power, 1,000 times stronger than he had ever felt. It was not just a node. It was the node. He was no longer Jonah Hale, the farmer. He was no longer the architect of the Silent Valley. He was the anchor, and he was, finally, ready to show them all what that meant. Jonah opened the cord. It was not a sound. It was a state of being. He plunged his consciousness deep, past the salt, past the mud, into the slow, tectonic heartbeat of Kelder. He felt the planet's pulse, a rhythm of magma and gravity. He pulled it up. He reached out, through the seal of accord, and grasped the radiant court fleet. He felt their choir, 1,000,000,000 voices strong, waiting. He took their hymn, a soaring, violet-hued harmony. He gathered the fear and stubbornness of his own village, the thrum of the human heart, a frantic, warm, desperate rhythm, and he wove them together, the earth pulse, the star song, the human heart. He took the cold, oppressive, single-note logic of Selig's array, and he presented it with this impossible, 3-part harmony. The array, a system built to optimize and level, had no protocol for this. It was an equation it could not solve. It was a logic bomb made of life. "Sing," Jonah roared, not to Astor, but to the sky, to the fleet, to the earth. Astor, at his side, sang with him. Her voice the clear, bright thread that stitched the harmony together. The crystal lattice over the valley pulsed. Once, twice. The cold, refracted light turned a sick, flickering green. The single, oppressive note of the array began to fracture, to break into 1,000 screaming, dissonant shards. And then, with a soundless, glorious crescendo, it shattered. The sky web, the cage of glass and logic, broke apart. It did not explode. It dissolved. It fell, not as shrapnel, but as a rain of soft, harmless, prismatic light, like the after-image of a dying star. The oppressive weight on the village vanished, sucked away in an instant. In the common house cellar, the villagers gasped, a collective breath of relief. Jonah swayed, the sudden release of pressure making him dizzy. He grinned, a fierce, feral thing. "It worked," Astor laughed, a breathless, shaky sound. We did it." "Recalibrating," a cold, precise voice said from the heavens. Warden Selig. His voice was broadcast from every directorate ship in orbit, a fleet Jonah had not even sensed. The voice was impressed. An unexpected composition, anchor, crude, sentimental, but effective. However, a song requires a medium. Let us see how you sing in a vacuum. And Selig engaged the null bloom. The word was a misnomer. It was not a bloom. It was a void. A wave of absolute, terrifying silence rolled over the valley. It was not just sound. It was energy. The hum of the irrigation hub died. The faint, violet light from the seal of accord vanished. The pulsing lights of the radiant courtships flickered and went dark. Their choir cut off mid-note. The very air grew cold. Jonah felt it as a physical blow, as if his soul had been ripped out. The connection to the planet, the fleet, the village, all gone. He was alone. He was deaf. He was just a man in the mud. In the cellar, the children, more sensitive to the resonance, screamed. And then they were silent. They did not faint. They simply collapsed. Their eyes were open, but vacant. The sudden sensory deprivation, the severing of the world's basic hum, had induced a resonant sickness, a total disconnect. Jonah staggered, clutching his head. I
I cannot hear them, he panted, panic rising. I cannot hear anything.
Aster was at his side, her face ashen. She, too, was cut off. Her great song had no air to travel on.
He did it, she whispered. He turned off the universe.
The Parhelion beam, the sun scythe, swept the fields again. Closer. It did not need the array. It was on its own power. It was erasing a trench where Terran soldiers were crouched, dissolving them into fine, black dust.
No,
Jonah said, stumbling back.
No.
Then, a new sound, the clank of heavy armor. Marshal Terran. He was striding across the silent field. His massive form, a silhouette against the burning line of the Parhelion. He was not looking at the Directorate threat. He was looking at Jonah. And in his hand, he held a kin blade, a hilt from which a 2-meter-long edge of pure, vibrating shadow emerged.
Marshal,
Aster shouted, her voice sounding thin and small in the dead air.
The children, the villagers, we have to.
The Empress is sentimental, Terran's voice rumbled, his armor's external speakers still functioning. He was on his own power. The human is a failure. The false prophecy has failed us. He raised the blade. I will not let the Directorate take this nexus, and I will not let this filth be the cause of our defeat. The song is broken. I will do what must be done. He was not going to fight the Directorate. He was going to execute Jonah. He was going to cleanse the nexus.
Terran, no,
Aster screamed.
He is.
The Marshal lunged, his speed unnatural, a massive, unstoppable force of zealotry. He was going to cut Jonah in half. Jonah was too weak, too disconnected, to even react. He saw the black blade coming, and Aster moved. She did not draw a weapon. She did not sing. She shoved Jonah hard, pushing him out of the path, and put herself in it. She threw her hands up, not to block, but to enact a single, ancient, ritualized gesture, a gesture of royal sacrifice. The black blade slammed into her. It did not cut. It hit something with a deafening gong that echoed in the vacuum. A flash of blinding golden light erupted from her, and Terran was thrown back, his massive body tumbling. Jonah stared. Aster was on one knee, breathing hard, but she was armored. The simple, blue miller's robe was gone. In its place, shimmering into existence from some personal, subspace fold, was her armor. But it was not armor for war. It was the ancient, ceremonial regalia of her ancestors, a breastplate of pure, articulated gold, gauntlets of woven light, and a helm that looked like a burning sun. It was archaic, beautiful, and utterly impractical.
That,
she panted, pushing herself up, was my grandmother's coronation armor. It is. Long abandoned. And very heavy. Terran scrambled to his feet, his face a mask of pure disbelief. You chose him over the song over me. He is the song, you blind fool, Aster roared, and the armor flared with her anger.
He is the new part.
Terran howled in rage and raised his blade again, but Jonah was moving. Aster's defense, her choice, had broken something free in him. The null bloom had killed the air, but it had not killed them. He grabbed Aster's hand, not her gauntlet, but her bare hand, where the sleeve had been pushed back.
What are you doing?
She gasped. The air is dead, he said, his voice a low, fierce growl. He pulled her close, his other hand going to the hilt of the scythe tucked in his belt. But we are not. He wants a vacuum fine. We will give him one. He pressed his hand, the one holding hers, against his own chest. You cannot sing out, so sing in, through me. He cut the network. Aster. He cut the wires, the air, the signal. He met her violet eyes. He forgot about the conductor. He forgot about bone and sinew and salt water. You have a choir of one, Your Majesty. Vey my rhythm. Sing. Now. She understood. She grasped his hand, her fingers locking with his. She closed her eyes. Jonah felt it. Her song. It did not go into the air. It went into him. It was a torrent of pure, unadulterated harmony, a fire in his veins. It traveled up his arm, into his heart, and he used his own resonance, his own anchor ability, to shape it. He was no longer a receiver. He was an amplifier. He was a living speaker. He drew the scythe. Terran was charging again, his blade raised. The Parhelion was sweeping, a wall of white death, only 100 yards away. Jonah did not look at Terran. He looked at the field, at the bamboo poles caked in mud, his antennas, his rainmakers. Aster, he whispered, the song building inside him to a breaking point. Tell me you love me. Shut up and fight, she whispered back. Her eyes closed, her entire being focused on the song she was pouring into him. He grinned. Close enough. He raised the scythe. He felt the combined, focused song of the Empress, channeled through his own human heart, a burning, perfect note. And he struck the earth. He did not hit the mud. He struck the central bamboo antenna, the one he had taught the children on, with the metal hook of the scythe. He created the earth octave. It was not a sound. It was a pulse, a shockwave of pure, weaponized harmony. It hit Terran, and the marshal's shadow blade simply dissolved. His armor froze, locked solid, and he toppled over like a statue, fully conscious but completely paralyzed. The pulse shot through the ground, through the network of mud-caked bamboo. It did not need the air. It traveled through the soil. High on the hill, Warden Solik, watching from his command ship, saw a diagnostic on his screen turn blood red. The harmonic pulse, shaped by Jonah, amplified by Aster, and conducted by the earth, was a perfect, resonant match for the Parhelion's own energy frequency. No, Selik whispered, his cold, logical mind finally understanding the farmer's plan. Oh, you, beautiful, inefficient, fool. Jonah hit the second pole, a new harmonic. The Parhelion beam, the giant sun scythe, stuttered. Its beam flickered. Jonah hit the third, the fourth. He was moving down the line, a farmer reaping a harvest of pure energy, the scythe a ringing, musical blur in his hands. He was striking the earth in a rhythm, a beat, a song of his own. The Parhelion's beam, confused by the feedback loop, twisted. It snapped back, like a whip, and struck the directorate towers on the ridge. Not the main array projector, which was high in orbit, but the ground-based power transmitters. There was a series of silent, blue-white explosions as Selik's own weapon tore his own infrastructure apart. The beam died. The null bloom field, its power source cut, wavered, and Jonah froze. He was standing, scythe raised for another blow, but he was seeing it, the memory, the one he had confessed to Aster, the silent valley, the faces, not dead, but empty. The faces of the people he had optimized, the people he had broken with his power. I am doing it again, his mind whispered. I am him. I am the man who breaks things. I am the one who makes things silent. The scythe grew heavy in his hand. The song from Aster faltered as his own doubt poisoned the link. He was going to drop it. He was going to let the null bloom return. He felt Aster's hand tighten on his, a fierce, painful grip. He turned. She was leaning on him, exhausted, but her eyes were open, and they were blazing. She saw the doubt in his face. She saw the ghost he was fighting. "Farmer," she panted, her voice a dry rasp, but sharp as a diamond. If you are going to fall, at least have the decency to fall in a straight row. You are ruining my harvest." He stared at her. Ruining her harvest. A slow smile. The farmer's smile. The real one. Spread across his face. It was the single most absurd, perfect, grounding thing she could have said. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said. The doubt shattered. The memory faded. He was not that man. He was this one. The one who loved this stubborn, impossible woman. The one who fell in straight rows. He turned, raised the scythe, and with one final, defiant cry, he struck the last pole. The harmonic blast was a tidal wave. It shot up, not at the towers, but at the null bloom projector itself. The pulse, the feedback, the pure life of their combined song, hit the void generator, and the silence broke. The sound of the wind, the hiss of the rain, the distant, angry shouts of Terran's remaining and very confused soldiers, the choir of the radiant court fleet, all came rushing back in a glorious, chaotic cacophony. In the cellar, the children blinked and gasped and began to cry. The sound was a symphony. The sky over Kelder was messy. Half of the Directorate's orbital array was dark, shattered by the feedback. The other half was flickering, damaged. The parhelion was offline. The null bloom was broken. The village was still standing. Jonah and Aster stood in the middle of the muddy, ruined field, still holding hands, covered in salt, mud, and sweat. They had won. A voice, cold and devoid of all emotion but a shadow of respect, filled the air. Warden Salik. A brilliant counter. Anchor. You have ruined the board. You have saved your village. A new light appeared in the sky. It was not a weapon. It was a projection. A vast, intricate, terrifying document, written in the Directorate's cold, logical script. "This is the Glass Edict," Selik's voice announced, not just to the village, but to the entire sector. The subject, Jonah Hale, is a Class 1 strategic threat. He is an uncontrolled, chaotic variable. He is to be surrendered to the Pale Directorate for immediate optimization. If he is not surrendered within 24 standard hours, this entire sector, including the Radiant Court's holy worlds and all outlying colonies, will be subject to full, systemic, Parhelion-class optimization. The projection zoomed in, highlighting a dozen planets, hundreds of settlements. "We will erase you all," Selik stated, as if discussing a math problem. "Deliver the anchor, or the harvest is over, for everyone." The projection vanished. The Directorate fleet, the undamaged half, simply held its position, waiting. Jonah looked at Aster. Her face was pale. He had not just saved his farm. He had just condemned a galaxy. "Well," Jonah said, wiping a smudge of mud from her cheek with his thumb. "He is not wrong. I am a chaotic variable." "Jonah," she whispered, her voice breaking. He will do it." "I know," Jonah said. He looked at his fields, at the mud, at the broken stalks of grain. He looked at the common house, where the cries of children were now being replaced by the sounds of joyful reunion. He had wanted to hide. Then he had wanted to defend. He let go of her hand and picked up the muddy jade seal of accord from the console. He held it, the Imperial power, his new burden. He turned to face the Radiant Court fleet, which was now powering up its weapons. Terran's fury now no doubt demanding a glorious, suicidal battle. Jonah raised the seal, performing the complex, graceful salute Aster had taught him. He did not fumble. His hand was steady. He projected his voice, not with a shout, but with the full, quiet, resonant power of the anchor. "This is the anchor," he broadcast, his voice carrying to every ship, every soldier, every villager. Cease all action. Marshal Terran, you are to stand down. High Chanter, silence your choir. He paused, then looked at Aster. A final, small, farmer's smile. Empress, he said, get your ship ready. You and I are going to a peace summit. The conquered spire was not a building. It was a scar, a single, needle-thin tower of unknown, ancient material that pierced the clouds, halfway between the Radiant Court's landing zone and the Directorate's new perimeter. It was the only thing on Kelder that was not devoted to farming, and it was said to be the planet's own anchor. It hummed, a low, single note, and it was the only place both sides would agree to meet. The negotiation room was at the apex, a circle of clear crystal that offered a sickening, panoramic view of the two silent, waiting fleets. The array, though damaged, still hung in the sky, a broken web. The Court's bioships pulsed with barely contained energy. Warden Salik was a column of gray, his face impassive. He stood by a projection, a map of the sector. Empress Aster was a column of fire. She had, against all advice, come in her full ceremonial armor. It was not the heavy, defensive armor she had worn in the field, but a flowing, terrifying cascade of light and shadow. Her ritual state made manifest. Marshal Terran stood behind her, his face a thundercloud, his hand never leaving the hilt of his new shadow blade. High Chanter Morel was a whisper of light at his side. And then, there was Jonah Hale. He was a column of mud. He had refused the ceremonial robes Aster's attendants had offered. He had refused to clean the salt and soil from his face. He wore his farmer's tunic, his worn boots, and pinned to his chest, looking both ridiculous and perfectly placed, was the imperial seal of accord. The parameters are simple, Selig began, his voice the only sound. The spire's hum seemed to quiet, to listen. A binary proposition, logic demands a resolution. The projection on the wall flared to life. It showed the Kelder nexus. 1, Selig said, and a cold, blue line shot out from the nexus, enveloping the Radiant Court's holy worlds. The Empress withdraws. The Court cedes the nexus. In return, I do not activate the repaired array. I do not enact the glass edict. This is your peace. And you, Aster's voice was a low growl. The Directorate, in turn, will place a permanent optimization garrison on Kelder to secure this strategic asset, Selig said, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world.
A permanent presence. A boot on their neck, Aster hissed. A structure, Selig corrected. 2.
The Empress, in her sentimentality, refuses. A red line shot from the nexus. You advance. You fight. My fleet is smaller, but my array is sufficient. It will level your undisciplined song. The glass edict is enacted. Your holy worlds, your colonies. They will all be optimized, made quiet, made clean. He turned. His pale hands clasped. Your war leader, Marshal Terran, may win a glorious, pointless victory in this single valley. But he will lose his civilization. The choice is yours, Empress. A quick, clean loss, or a slow, agonizing one. It was a perfect trap. There was no room to move. Terran's hand tightened on his blade. You have forgotten an option, a new voice said. Every head turned. Jonah Hale, the farmer, was walking forward. He stepped past the Empress, his muddy boots leaving prints on the spire's pristine crystal floor. He looked at Selig's map, at the red and blue lines of war. This is a terrible map, Jonah said. Selig's eyebrow twitched. It is a precise, tactical projection. Anchor. It is not. It is terrible, Jonah insisted, his voice calm. You are both arguing about the sky. You are drawing lines, claiming orbits, fighting over resonance. You have forgotten what is actually important. And what? Selleck asked, a dangerous, cold curiosity in his voice. Is that farmer? Jonah tapped the glowing projection, right on the center of the nexus. The ground, the soil. You are arguing over who gets to own the farm. You have not asked the farm what it thinks. Marshal Terran let out a choked sound, a mixture of a laugh and a snarl. It has finally broken. The human is mad. He is asking a planet for its opinion. He is not mad, Marshal, Aster said, her voice clear, her faith absolute. He is an anchor. Jonah ignored them all, his gaze fixed on Selleck. Your logic is flawed. Warden, you have given us a binary choice, a 1 or a 0. But the universe is not binary. Life is not binary. Life is messy. It is a chord. It has a third note. He held up his dirt-caked hands. Give me 9 minutes. The silence that followed was absolute. Selleck stared at him. 9 minutes. An arbitrary, inefficient, and statistically insignificant measure of time. It is a mockery, Terran roared. A human stalling tactic. He wants to... What pray? We should be storming your ships. Logic spit. 9 minutes, Jonah repeated, his voice cutting through the rage. For what I am about to do. I need that long for the... He searched for a word Selleck would understand. The calibration. 9 minutes of what? Selleck pressed. A demonstration, Jonah said. Of the third option, the land-human royal harmony. And if it does not work, if, at the end of 9 minutes, you are not convinced, then you can have your optimization. Selleck almost smiled. You would wager your entire world on 9 minutes of singing. He is not the only one, Aster said. She stepped forward, her ceremonial armor ringing. She unclasped her own signet, the primary seal of the Empress. She did not throw it. She placed it gently on the tactical table, a soft clink that echoed like a cannon shot. I, Empress Aster of the Radiant Court, she said. Her voice broadcast now, not just to the room, but by the Spire's own ancient systems, to both fleets. I wager my life, my crown, and my signet on this anchor. If he fails, Warden Selleck, you have not just him. You have me. My fleet will stand down. You will have your peace. Terran's face went white. Majesty, you cannot. Morel just watched, her ancient eyes wide. Selleck looked at the seal. He looked at the Empress. He looked at the farmer. An illogical, sentimental, completely chaotic variable. It was fascinating. Your terms are inefficient, Selleck said, and theatrical. But they are accepted. 9 minutes. He tapped a console. A holographic clock appeared in the air, its cold, logical numbers counting down from 9 minutes. The clock is running. Anchor, show me. The third note. The first minute. The setup. I need the floor, Jonah said. He walked to the very center of the room, to a large, circular inlay in the crystal. The foundation stone of the spire, visible even at the apex. It is a drumhead. The whole spire is... He knelt, placing his hands flat on the stone. It was warm. Aster, he said, not looking at her. He is expecting a war song. Terran is expecting a war song. I do not want one. I need the opposite. Give me the smallest song you have. The one that starts something. She stood behind him, her armored presence a comfort. She was confused. The hymn of passage. No, smaller. The one for a new life. The one you are not supposed to sing in public. Her breath hitched. The entire court, listening on the comm, would have gasped. It was the most private, sacred chant. The birth song of the Empress line. But she saw his logic. It was not a song of conquest. It was a song of creation. She closed her eyes. She began to sing. It was a single, low note, a hum, a whisper. But it was the most complex harmony Jonah had ever heard. The second minute, the folk tune. Jonah took her song, that ancient, royal vibration. He accepted it, and he mixed it. He reached into his own memory, not of the silent valley, but of the harvest festival on Kelder, the fiddles, the laughter, the simple, stubborn, repetitive tune the children sang. He wove the Kelder harvest song into the Empress's royal birth song. The sound in the room did not change, but the feeling did. Taryn winced, as if he had heard a blasphemy. Salik's eye twitched. The two songs were dissonant, impossible. The third minute, the chord. "They do not fit," Aster whispered, her concentration breaking. "They are not supposed to fit," Jonah whispered back, his eyes closed. "They are not one song. They are neighbors. They are a community." He pressed his hands harder onto the stone. He found the pulse of the spire, the deep, slow rhythm of Kelder itself, and he used it as the bass note, the foundation. He added the third note, the earth, the birth song, the harvest song, the planet song, the land-human royal chord. The spire thrummed. The crystal floor vibrated, not with a sound, but with a feeling. A single, unified, complex, impossible wave of pure, unadulterated life. The fourth minute, the feedback. The chord did not attack. It did not defend. It simply broadcast. It was a mirror, not of energy, but of consequence. The spire, amplified by Jonah, sent the feeling out, to every ship, every soldier, every person connected to this fight. Aboard Selik's command ship, a young Directorate logistician sat at his console. He was running casualty projections. Suddenly, his screen flickered. He was not on the ship. He was at home, a home he had not visited in 6 years. His daughter, who was 8, was holding a drawing. "Come home, Papa." He had not opened the message. It was inefficient. He looked at his hands on the console, and they were shaking. He, who had optimized a food shipment and regretted a colony of 20,000 people, was suddenly weeping for a single, small drawing. The fifth minute, the cracking. Aboard the Radiant Court's flagship, Marshal Taryn gripped his blade, fighting the resonance. This was human filth, a trick, but the chord was insistent. He was not in the spire. He was on a burning world, years ago. A glorious reclamation. He heard the screams of the planet's defenders. He had always heard them as a dissonant counterpoint to his righteous song. But now, the chord stripped his song away. He heard the screams, raw, terrified, the screams of people. He smelled the burning. He staggered, his armor suddenly too heavy, his righteousness a hollow, sick, cold thing. He dropped his shadow blade. It clattered on the crystal floor, the sound shocking. The sixth minute, the overload. Warden Selik's adjutant's screen went from green to blood red. Warden, I have systemic failure. The optimization field is collapsing. The emotional data. It is off the scale. The human metric is unprocessable. It is grief. Warden. It is regret. The systems, they cannot compute. Regret. The Directorate's technology, built on a foundation of pure, cold logic, was being presented with the bill. The accumulated, unprocessed suffering of their entire empire, and it was breaking. The machines, just like the people, could not handle the truth. The seventh minute, the invitation. Salik was pale. His hands clenched. The cord was still holding. A terrible, beautiful, agonizing wave of shared pain. "It is chaos," he whispered. "It is inefficient. This feeling. It serves no purpose."
"Does it not?"
Jonah's voice was strained. He was pouring sweat. Holding this harmony was killing him. "Your equation is wrong, Warden. You have been dividing by zero. You keep trying to optimize the messy parts. But you are the messy part." Jonah looked at him, his eyes clear. "You are not outside the system, Salik. You are just as broken as the rest of us. Touch the stone. Optimize this." It was a challenge. It was an illogical, suicidal, sentimental dare. And Salik, the logician, could not resist the data. He had to know. Why was his perfect system failing? He reached out a long, trembling, pale finger. He pressed it to the foundation stone. The 8th minute, the cracking of Salik. He did not see the spire. He was a boy, small, cold, his home world. He was in his mother's garden. She was not logical. She was warm. She loved flowers. Bright, useless, inefficient, colorful flowers. He remembered being proud of his first optimization algorithm, the one that proved the flowers were a waste of nutrients. He saw the day the first array was turned on. His array. He saw the flowers wilt, turn gray. He saw his mother. And she was not sad. She was not angry. She was just blank. Her emotional chaos had been leveled. She was optimized. She was his first success. She was the first person he had murdered. Warden Selick ripped his hand back from the stone with a sound that was not human. It was a keen, a wail of pure, logical, perfect agony. His entire life, his entire philosophy, had been a lie, built on the grave of his mother's flowers. His logic was shattered. The 9th minute, the resolution. The cord held. The battle was frozen. The entire sector was paused, weeping. Aster stepped forward. Her voice was shaking. But she was the Empress. She was the one who acted. "This is Empress Aster," she said to the silent, waiting fleets. "The old songs are broken. The old logic is flawed. We have been fighting over a resource, but he, the anchor, he has shown us it is a home." She looked at Jonah, at his bowed head, at the sweat and pain. Then she looked at the shattered Salik and the stunned Terran. "By the power of the signet, a new song is written. I declare this world, Kelder, a free and sovereign territory. Not under the court, not under the directorate. It belongs to itself." She raised her voice, her power returning. "This is the Farmers' Accord. It will be protected by the court, and it will be recognized by the directorate. Warden Salik." Salik looked up, his face a ruin of his former self. He saw Jonah. He saw the farmer who had defeated his entire life's work with a feeling. Jonah met his gaze. He was not gloating. He was just waiting. "The optimization has failed," Selick whispered, his voice broadcast to his fleet. The confession was a physical weight. "The equation is flawed. A new variable must be accounted for." He was, even in his breaking, a scientist. "We recognize." "The accord," Aster nodded. "Jonah, it is done." Jonah took a deep, shuddering breath. "Not yet. The weeds are still in the sky." He placed his hands on the stone for the last time. He did not push. He listened. He found the new, fundamental truth of the universe. The Farmers' Accord. A law, agreed upon by both sides. He tuned Kelder to that truth. This land is owned. This soil is tilled. He took that resonance of belonging, and he broadcast it. The remaining, damaged array in orbit. The technology built on the principle of unbelonging, of optimizing, a universe that had no owner. It screamed. The command codes had no purchase. The logic of tilled land, of a home, identified the array as a blight, a pest, a weed. The array's core logic, its very purpose, was erased. The crystal lattice, the broken web in the sky, went dark, not with a bang, but with a fizzle. The cold lights just turned off. Jonah slumped, falling sideways, caught by Aster. The holographic clock in the room read 00. A bell, a deep, ancient, resonant bell from the spire itself. A bell no one had heard in 10,000 years. Chimed. Once. The sound rolled across the valley, over the silent fleets. The war was over. Jonah looked up at Aster, his farmer's smile weak but triumphant. See, 9 minutes, farmers. We are very efficient. Aster was not smiling. She was crying, great, silent, hopeless tears that cut clean paths through the grime and salt on her face. She held him, and for a moment, she was not an empress. She was just a woman, holding the man who had just saved the galaxy by teaching it how to weed. The fleets did not linger. The withdrawal was as profound and strange as the battle itself. The Pale Directorate's ships did not flee in disgrace. They simply executed the new logic. Their optimization had failed. The variable of community had broken their equation. And so, in a cold, silent, and perfectly coordinated maneuver, their ships turned as one, folded space, and vanished. They left behind a silence that was heavier than their threats, a void of pure, calculated retreat. The Radiant Court's departure was far more complicated. Marshal Terran, his armor locked, his pride shattered, had been transported back to his flagship. He was recalled to the court, Jonah learned, to face a ritual of realignment, which sounded both terrifying and deeply bureaucratic. High Chanter Mirel, however, had her fleet sing a new song. It was not a hymn of victory. It was a low chord of deep respect, a sound like a mountain bowing its head. And then, they too, ascended, a swirl of light and music, leaving Kelder to its own sky. The valley was quiet. The scars remained. The fields were black in long, sweeping arcs from the parhelion's beam. The earth was caked in a sterile, white layer of conductive salt. The irrigation channels were choked with the gray, dormant dust of deactivated shardlings. The villagers emerged from the cellars, blinking, into this new, strange peace. They looked at the sky, expecting a new terror. They looked at the fields, and for the first time, saw a problem they understood. War was an abstract. Salt in the soil was a crisis. Well, Old Man Hemlock said, spitting a grain of salt from his lips. This is a mess. The harvest is ruined. Peace, it turned out, was just another kind of work. One person had not left. Warden Selleck remained. He had been found, sitting at the base of the conquered spire, his back to the ancient stone, simply watching the sunrise. He had no guards, no weapons. His uniform was undone at the throat. He looked smaller. The new village council, which consisted of Jonah, the miller's wife, old woman Gable, and Hemlock, approached him with a mixture of fear and caution. Jonah was the only one who was calm. "Warden," Jonah said, his voice quiet. The other farmers were holding scythes. Jonah was empty-handed. Salik looked up. His eyes, once so cold and precise, were empty. They were the eyes of a man who had seen the foundation of his universe dissolved. "Anchor," Selleck said, his voice a dry rasp. "The equation is incomplete. The data, the grief, it is an unprocessable variable. I I have failed. You have, Jonah agreed, not unkindly. So what now are you surrendering? Surrender is an emotional concept, Selig whispered. It implies a victor. There is no victor here. Only data. I cannot return to the directorate. I am flawed. I am compromised by feeling. I am no longer optimized. He looked at his own shaking hands as if they were alien, traitorous things. I am requesting residency, Selig said, the word sounding strange in his logical cadence. Hemlock scoffed. Residency after you tried to turn us into blank-eyed slaves. After you burned the fields, throw him from the spire. Selig did not react. He simply looked at Jonah. What would you do here? Warden, Jonah asked. Study, Selig said. The logic failed. The variable, humanity, is robust. It is inefficient. It is chaotic. It is the only thing that defeated me. I must understand it. He looked at the ruined fields. The salt, the shardlings. They are my work. I can undo them. Not as an optimization. As an apology. Atonement. Another inefficient, emotional concept I must process. Jonah looked at Selig, the man who was his perfect, dark reflection. The man he could have been. He stays, Jonah said. The council erupted. Jonah, he is a monster. He is a scientist, Jonah said, his voice firm. He is the best one we have, and we have a lot of salt to clean up. He is not a warden. He is not a prisoner. He is our problem, our free science guardian. Maybe, but he stays. We do not throw broken things away here. Hemlock, we fix them. And so, Warden Selig, the man who had almost optimized a galaxy, became Kelder's most overqualified and deeply penitent groundskeeper. He began his work, not with grand gestures, but by silently, painstakingly, taking soil samples. The world had to be rebuilt. The Farmers' Accord had made Kelder a sovereign, protected world, but it did not make the grain grow. Jonah was, to his deep discomfort, a hero. The villagers wanted to call him Lord Anchor. High Chanter Morel had, before she left, offered him a voice in the Radiant Court, a title of immense power. He refused them all. I am not a lord, he told the council, his hands deep in his pockets. I am a farmer. My fields are ruined. My tools are broken. I just want to go back to work. But you are the anchor, young Pia protested. You sang. Jonah knelt to her level. And now the singing is done, and the planting has to start. That is the harder part. He did, however, accept one title. The fields around the conquered spire, the ones where the final battle had been fought, were deemed sacred by the villagers. They were afraid to work them. Fine, Jonah had said. I will work them. They are good soil. Just tired. He became the keeper of the spire field. It was not a title of power. It was a job description. It was perfect. Humans, he thought, were at their strongest, not when they were craving a throne, but when they were protecting a garden. Life settled. The 9 minutes became a legend, a story told over mugs of ale, growing more fantastic with each telling. The villagers, with that deep farmer's pragmatism, were more concerned with the practical magic of Selig's new desalination protocols. The former warden, using his knowledge of resonance, had figured out a way to use low-frequency pulses to crystallize the salt in the soil, making it easy to rake up and harvest. Good for preserving meat, Hemlock declared, suddenly finding the former monster quite useful. Aster returned, She came not with a fleet, but in a single, small, diplomatic skiff. She did not wear armor, or even the robes of an empress. She wore her Asha disguise, the simple brown tunic and trousers. She found Jonah where she knew she would, in the spire field, ankle-deep in mud, trying to repair his irrigation system. They stood, for a long, awkward minute, in silence. The heroes who had saved the galaxy. "Your Majesty," he said finally, wiping his muddy hand on his pants. "Anchor," she replied, her voice just as stiff. A beat. "You are holding the hydrospanner wrong," she said. He looked at the tool in his hand. "I am not." "You are," she insisted, stepping into the mud. "You are trying to force it. You have to listen to the machine. Feel the burrs." "Right." A slow, real smile spread across his face. "You have been practicing." "I am an empress," she said, trying to sound haughty, but the smile in her eyes gave her away. "I am a quick study." She stayed for a week. They talked. Not about the war. Not about the cord, or their shared terror, or the kiss. They talked about things. Awkward. Simple things. "Silic," she said, as they watched the former warden meticulously cataloging Shardling variants. "Seems calmer." "He is," Jonah said. "He is teaching the children logic. They are teaching him why. It is a fair, if terrifying, trade." "And Terran?" Jonah asked. "He is realigning," she said, a shadow crossing her face. "My court is in chaos. They are reforming. Fewer rituals, less hierarchy, more listening." She looked at the spire. "You have broken more than just the array. Farmer, you have broken everything." They walked the fields, their hands brushing. She would point to a plant. "What is this one?" "That," Jonah would say, "is blue vine. It is good for rope." "And the flowers. They make a terrible tea. But the color is nice." She would, in turn, hum. A low, complex note. "What is that?" he would ask. "That is the second hymn of Setting Stone. It is a song for foundations. We sing it when we build. It is a promise that the stones will hold." They were learning each other's languages, through seeds and songs, and the feel of wet earth. On the day she was to leave, she and Jonah found themselves teaching a class. It had been her idea, the Living Harmony School, a small, open-air structure built near the spire. The first students were the village children, and, to everyone's surprise, Silic, who sat in the back, taking notes on a datapad. Aster was trying to teach them about the great song. They were not getting it. "It is a connection," she said, exasperated. "You just feel it." Jonah laughed. He knelt, pushing aside the books. "She is making it complicated. She is an empress. They like things complicated." He put his hand on the ground. "Here, Pia, put your hand next to mine. Close your eyes. Do not try to sing. Just listen. What do you hear?" The girl was quiet for a long time. "I hear the river," she whispered, "and the worms, and a sound, a deep, slow sound." "That is it," Jonah said, his voice soft. "That is the first note. That is the earth, breathing. Everything else, that is just noise on top." Aster watched him, her heart full. This was what she had seen. This was the man who had changed the key. That night, the village held a true harvest festival. It was not an act of defiance. It was an act of joy. The new grain, grown in leached soil, was tough. but it was theirs. The bonfire was high. The ale flowed. Jonah and Aster sat on a log, away from the dancing, close enough to feel the fire's warmth. "My court," Aster said suddenly, her voice quiet, her gaze on the flames, "wants me to name an heir, or a consort. They have candidates. A very logical list, all very polished, all of them know the correct salutes." Jonah looked at his muddy boots. "I am a terrible saluter." "The worst," she agreed. A small smile played on her lips. "You are also a terrible miller. You are stubborn. You are contrary. And for a man who can hear the galaxy sing, you are remarkably fond of dirt." "It is the farming," he said, picking up a twig, digging a line in the soil. "It grounds you. No pun intended." She turned, her face serious, the firelight dancing in her violet eyes. "I am not offering you a throne, Jonah. My throne is? It is a cage. It is beautiful, and it is ancient. And I am so tired of cages." Selleck had his logic. "I have my rituals. They are the same thing, in the end." "What are you offering, then?" he asked, his voice very low. "A house," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "A small one. Here. With a leaky roof, probably, and a field. A place to plant things. Together. I am not offering a crown. I am offering a home. For two." Jonah was very still. He looked at the line he had drawn in the dirt. He reached into the small pouch at his belt. "I made something," he said, his voice perverse. "It is from the rain, the first battle, the glass." He opened his hand. In his palm sat a ring. It was not jade. It was not gold. It was a simple, perfect loop of crystal. The shattered fragments of the array tumbled with river stones until all the sharp edges were gone. It was smooth, and it captured the firelight, refracting it into a dozen harmless, beautiful colors. He had bound it with a single, thin twist of copper wire from his old, ruined irrigation system. "It is not a signet," he said, his voice rough. "It is just a piece of a broken weapon, one that I turned into a circle. I guess that is what we do. We make things whole." He held it out, his large, scarred hand shaking. "A home," he said, his voice finally steady. "A home sounds good. Will I still have to teach you how to use a scythe?" She was crying, the tears silent, just as they had been in the spire. But this time, she was smiling. "Probably," she whispered. "And you will have to learn to sing in key." He slipped the ring of broken glass and old wire onto her finger. It fit perfectly. They sat for a long time, not speaking. The war would come again. The directorate was vast. The court was fickle. Peace was not an ending. It was a season. It was a crop. It had to be tended. "If it comes back," she said, reading his thoughts, her hand closing over his. "If they come back." "I know," he said. He took her hand, the one with the ring, and he held it. "Let them. We will be here." He looked at the field, dark and resting, waiting for spring. "We will do what we have always done. We will plant peace so deep, its roots will be stronger than their weapons. And if hatred comes, well," he smiled, his slow, farmer's smile, "we will reap that too." The wedding was not a state affair. It was a harvest. The first true harvest after the 9 minutes was a miracle of stubbornness, science, and soil. Warden Selleck, in his new, self-appointed role as guardian of the soil, had worked relentlessly. He had not just removed the salt. He had, with a farmer's obsessive patience, reintroduced microbial life, using his directorate knowledge not to optimize, but to heal. The fields, though scarred black in places, were producing. The grain was tough, the colors muted, but it was life. And in the center of this new life, in the Spire field, Jonah Hale was confronting his past. It had been weeks. Weeks of Astor living with him in his small hut. Weeks of rebuilding the irrigation, of teaching the children, of finding a new, quiet rhythm. Weeks of watching Selleck. Selleck was the catalyst. He was the ghost. Jonah would watch the former warden, now dressed in simple homespun, his pale face smudged with dirt, meticulously taking readings. Selleck was, in his own logical, broken way, happy. He was a scientist with the greatest puzzle of his life, a variable that fought back. One morning, Selleck approached Jonah, who was clearing a drainage ditch. Astor was nearby, bundling the new, tough-stalked grain. "Anchor," Selleck said. His voice had lost its cold, broadcast quality. It was just a man's voice now, dry and precise. "The data is conclusive. Your original hypothesis was correct." Jonah froze, his shovel halfway in the earth. "My original hypothesis. The resonance," Selleck said, holding up a data pad that showed a complex, swirling map of the valley's energy. "I believed the planet was the source. I was wrong. You are the source. The nexus did not attract you. You are the nexus. Your presence here, for 12 years. It has imprinted. You have. You have tuned this entire valley, this soil. It is. You. This is why it responded to your farmer's plan. You were not commanding a planet, Anchor. You were commanding yourself." Jonah dropped the shovel. He looked at his hands. He had known, on some level. He had felt it when he hid here. He had not chosen Kelder because it was a nexus. He had chosen it because it was quiet, a place to muffle his own terrible, screaming resonance. He had hidden a forest fire inside a tinderbox. "I need to tell you something," Jonah said, his voice a low, hollow thing. He looked at Astor. "Both of you." He sat on the damp earth, the man who had faced down 2 fleets. "The past failure I mentioned," Jonah began, his throat tight. "The loveless decision. It was not a failure, Selleck. It was a resounding success. And it was not a decision. It was the decision. The one you copied." Selleck went very still. "Copied. I was young," Jonah said, his eyes on the horizon, seeing a different valley, a different time. "I was brilliant. I was arrogant. I was the top theoretical anchor at the Directorate Academy. I believed what you believe. That emotion was static, that it was noise, that it was the variable that kept breaking the equation of peace." Astor knelt beside him, her face full of a sudden, cold dread. She had not heard this part. "The array was my thesis," Jonah whispered. "Not the hardware, the theory, the optimization of collective volition, the chord. I invented it. I believed I could tune a population, remove the noise of rage, greed, and fear. I believed I could create perfect, logical, lasting peace." Selleck's face was white. The Silent Valley protocols. That was, you are. You are Architect Hale. "I was," Jonah said. "They gave me a valley, a test case, a rebellious, chaotic, passionate people. And I tuned them. I optimized them. I turned on my cord, and I made them quiet. I made them perfect. He was shaking. I went to visit, to see my success. The valley was clean. It was productive. There was no crime. There was no art. There was no music. There was no laughter. I saw a child fall from a tree, a bad break. He just looked at his own broken bone. No tears. No fear. He just waited for optimization. His mother. She did not comfort him. She just filed the report. I had not erased their pain. I had erased their love. I had erased them. I had created a valley of polite, efficient corpses. He buried his face in his hands. My past failure was not a battle I lost. It was a genocide of the soul. My genocide. I could not turn it off, he choked out. The cord. It was too perfect. It was self-sustaining. It held. I faked my death. I took a ship. I ran. I ran until my resonance was masked, until I could not hear them, until I found this place, this nexus. I thought it would hide me, dampen me. I did not realize. I was just teaching the soil my own terrible song. He finally looked at Aster. That is who I am. I am not the anchor. I am the man who built the cage. Salik. He is just the zookeeper. I am the monster. The silence was profound. Salik looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He was staring at Jonah with a kind of horrified, religious awe. He had not just been following a theory. He had been following a man. Aster was very, very still. Her face was pale, but she was not looking at him with horror. She was looking at him with a deep, heartbreaking sadness. I know, she said, her voice soft. Jonah's head snapped up. What? I know, she repeated. She touched the ring he had given her, the loop of shattered array glass. When you first touched me. In the village. When I called you anchor, the signet. It sings. Jonah. It reads the resonance. The signature. I felt him. The architect. It was cold. It was the most terrifying, loveless, lonely song I had ever felt. You knew, he whispered, his blood running cold. You knew, and you gave me the seal of accord. You kissed me. I did not kiss the architect, she said, her voice fierce. She grabbed his hand. The signet. It showed me the architect. It showed me the data. But I saw the farmer. I saw the man who was terrified of his own power. I saw the man who was hiding, not to plot, but to atone. I saw the man who built a resonance grid and used it to water his plants. The architect was your past, Jonah, but the farmer was your choice. She was crying now, but her grip was like iron. Did I know yes? Did I hide it from Terran? Yes. He would have killed you, under our own laws. Did I lie to you? You let me. I let you choose, she said, her voice breaking. I let you choose which man you were. And you chose. You chose the mud. You chose the harvest. You chose me. I was just betting on the right man. He stared at her, the depth of her trust. her faith in him, hitting him harder than Selik's parhelion. She had known the very worst of him, and she had still chosen him. He did not speak. He just pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, breathing in the scent of soil and sunlight, and her. Selik watched this. He was the logician. He was the man of data, and he was watching his entire world realign. The hypothesis, he said, his voice shaking, was not flawed. The application was you. You used the cord to erase, but in the spire, you used it to reflect, to share. You did not erase the variable. You unified it. The equation. It is not optimization. It is communion. He was having a revelation. It was terrible and beautiful. The Silent Valley, Selik said, his eyes bright with a new, terrifying fervor. The place. It is still optimized. Jonah pulled back from Aster, his face grim. Yes, as far as I know, it is a monument to my sin, a perfect society. No, Selik said, it is not a monument. It is a control group. It is the problem. I must go. Go where? Aster asked. There, Selik said. He looked at Jonah, his face illuminated. You were the architect. I was just the believer. You found your atonement in the soil. I must find mine in the stars. I will go to the Silent Valley. I will bring them noise. I will bring them the data from the spire. He had a new mission. He was not a groundskeeper. He was a missionary. I will not use the cord to erase, Selik vowed, his voice trembling. I will build reflectors, mirror seeds, devices that force them to feel, not my feeling, not your feeling, their own. I will give them back their grief. It is the only logical path. He was, Jonah realized, the most dangerous man in the universe. A broken logician, armed with the concept of empathy, and he was, perhaps, their only hope. Jonah knew, then, what he had to do. He had confessed to Aster. He had confessed to Selik. He had not confessed to his home. That evening, he called a village meeting. Everyone came. They gathered in the square, in the firelight. Jonah stood on the cistern, the place he had first shouted his defiance at the drone. Aster stood at the base. Selik stood in the shadows, watching. Jonah told them. He told them everything. The academy, the architect Hale, the theory, the Silent Valley, the hollowness, the faked death, the running. I am the man who invented the array, he said, his voice quiet, but it carried in the still night air. The weapon that tried to level you, the logic that built the parhelion. Selik. He was just perfecting my homework. I am the source of all of it. I am the reason this war came to your homes. I am a monster. The silence that followed was not the cold silence of the directorate. It was the deep, heavy, earthy silence of the village. They looked at each other. They looked at Old Man Hemlock. They looked at Gable, the elder. Gable, her face a map of wrinkles, stepped forward. She spat into the fire. A monster, she said, her voice a reedy cackle. Well, that is a fine how do you do. A monster. And this, Silent Valley. They are still. Quiet. Yes, Jonah whispered, his heart sinking. Then you were not just a monster, Gable said. You were a damned fool, a young one, from the sound of it. And a fool with too much theory. She hobbled closer. But you are our fool, it seems. You did not stay a fool. You came here. You learned to farm. And when the time came, you fought for us. You bled for us. But you brought the war, Hemlock growled, stepping up. You probably did. The lightning strikes the tallest tree, farmer. And you are a very tall tree. But you are also the one who ended it, in 9 minutes. He stared at Jonah, his eyes narrowed. I do not care about the architect. I do not care about this valley. That is sky talk. That is theory. This. He stamped his boot on the stone. This is earth. This is work. The high fields. They are still salty. The harvest was weak. This confession. It does not change the work. He turned, went to the smithy, and came back. He held out a hoe. Its handle was new, its blade freshly sharpened. He shoved it into Jonah's chest. We do not care what you were, monster, Hemlock said, his voice rough. We care what you are, and what you are is a farmer, and your field is a mess. So, stop talking and start a new row. Jonah looked at the hoe. He looked at the villagers. They were not angry. They were farmers. They were pragmatic. A problem was not a sin. It was just a thing to be fixed. He took the hoe. Yes, he said. They did not condemn him. They did not punish him. They gave him work. It was the farmer's absolution. The wedding, 2 days later, was the harvest festival. There was no ceremony, as the court would know it. There was just a party. Aster wore her brown Asha tunic. Jonah wore his. They stood at the base of the spire, which hummed its low approval. Selleck was there, his bags packed, his ship waiting. He was leaving for the Silent Valley. He bowed, a new, awkward gesture. Good luck. Anchor, Empress, your communion. It is a new data set. I will report. And he was gone. The vows were simple. The village gathered. Jonah held out a handful of Kelder soil, dark and rich. I am a farmer, he said, his voice rough. I promise to listen to the soil. I promise to keep the weeds out. I promise to stay and to build a home with you. Aster, in turn, held out a single, glowing seed, a star blossom from her royal homeworld. I am an empress, she said, her voice shaking, but clear. And I am tired of songs about thrones. I promise to hear the music in the quiet. I promise to learn the rows and to build a home with you. They did not exchange rings. They knelt together. They dug a small hole at the base of the spire. They planted his soil and her seed together, and the village cheered. That night, the music was loud. The ale was strong. The children were dancing. And then the bell rang. From the apex of the spire, A single, deep, resonant gong, a sound not heard in 10,000 years. The music stopped. The village froze. It rang again. Gong. It rang 9 times. Jonah and Aster looked at each other. It was not a sound of war. It was not an alarm. It was a signal, a message, a beam of soft, blue light, projected from the spire's apex, not in directorate code, not in court song, but in simple, mathematic, galactic standard. It was a map, a distant colony, on the very edge of the recognized noise of the galaxy, and a single, repeating word. Anchor. It was not a demand. It was not an edict. It was a question, a request, from someone, somewhere, who was in pain. Jonah and Aster did not speak. They looked at the sky. The party was over. The work was just beginning. They walked, hand in hand, away from the fire, toward their small hut. It was a granary, one they had converted, the sweetest-smelling house in the village. Inside, it was quiet. He still had his old, battered, straw farmer's hat. He picked it up and placed it on his head. She, in turn, went to a small, carved wooden box. Inside, it did not hold her imperial crown. That was on a ship, back home, gathering dust. It held her signet, her badge of office, her tool. She fastened it around her neck. He looked at her, the farmer. She looked at him, the Empress. Well, Jonah said, a small, tired farmer's smile on his face. It seems the harvest is bigger than we thought. It is, she said, her voice clear, her eyes full of love and steel. So let us go. We have a lot of weeding to do. They walked out of the granary, into the starlight, toward the glowing spire. Behind them, in the dark, quiet hut, a single, forgotten object sat on a sack of new grain. It was her other crown, the heavy, golden, ceremonial one, used for coronations and war. She had forgotten it. Next to it, she had placed his other hat, the one that was too torn to wear, the one that had seen 12 years of hiding. A crown of gold, a hat of straw, side by side in a granary. A new world, a world where power had, at last, learned to bow to the seed.